What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into the first West Virginia postgame show of the 2023 season here on the West Virginia Voice of College Football channel, also simulcasted on the Big 12 Voice of College Football channel as well. Appreciate you guys tuning in to either one you're tuned in on. If you followed here last year, you may know me. Jordan, one of the hosts of the Country Roads webcast, may have a couple of the other co-hosts from our show there joining us, but we'll be with you guys here for these post-game shows throughout the season and just going to chat with you guys following these Mountaineer games and hopefully following the rest of the season or throughout the rest of the season anyway. We will have some more positive things to talk about than we do following this game, but nonetheless, still, there is plenty to discuss in this opening loss for the Mountaineers. Unfortunately, the third straight season West Virginia starts 0-1. Third straight season starting with a loss on the road to another Power 5 opponent. This time it's the Nittany Lions. 38-15, West Virginia falls at Beaver Stadium in Happy Valley, unfortunately. But appreciate you guys that are tuned in here live with us. And if you are in here live, whether it's on the Big 12 channel or the West Virginia channel, I want to encourage you, whether it's live or on the playback that you're watching, hit the thumbs up button. Really helps not only this video's performance, but it'll help future videos performances here on the channel as well. And be sure to subscribe so you can catch us for all these live streams throughout the season here with these post-game West Virginia shows immediately following the conclusion of each West Virginia football game this year. And really excited to be doing these for the second consecutive season. So hope you guys are as excited as we are, and there will be plenty to talk about, I'm sure. So be sure to drop your all's thoughts there in the comments in regards to this game. You know, what you think it means for the remainder of West Virginia's season, for Penn State, for that matter, as well. If you're in here as a Penn State fan, even that could be a possibility, I guess, also. But having said that, I don't know where to begin. I guess I'll just kind of run through it chronologically with the game. I know West Virginia started off kind of the way I was hoping they would, sticking with Penn State, kind of trying to make it a slower paced game and staying within striking distance, which I think, if you're looking to pull an upset, that's what you want to do when you're a team that's probably a little bit overmatched. That Penn State team that we just watched play out there tonight was really talented. I think personally, I may have underrated them a little bit, and especially the one that really impressed me was Drew Aller, but get into more of that later and more on the West Virginia defense. But I think early on, West Virginia was doing what they needed to do. If you're looking for a recipe for an upset, stay within, single score, 7 to 10 point striking distance, and hopefully keep it close going into the fourth quarter and try and go for it then. And I think West Virginia did that in the first half, but I think halftime adjustments, we've talked about it being an Achilles heel of this staff at times throughout their tenure, or I guess lack thereof when it comes to adjustments. And I think yet again in this game, we saw Penn State make better in-game and halftime adjustments than West Virginia. And, it paid off for them in the second half. And also I think, West Virginia's defense probably got worn down a little bit. West Virginia's offense, despite not having a ton of 3-and-outs, they were moving the ball, but they couldn't really score, once they got past midfield, it felt like. And of course, credit to Penn State's defense for that. But I think what that led to was later in the game, West Virginia's defense was probably a bit tired. Penn State was able to, use the run, do play action, whatever they wanted. But when it comes to that Penn State offense, I think the major concern again for this game looked like the secondary for West Virginia. And that's going to be a big issue if that's a problem yet again this season. I'm hoping that it's not. This is a small sample size against a really good team. So that's kind of what I'm trying to think about with my takeaways from this game is how much can I take away from it? Because there are times West Virginia's offense really struggled, but is that because, Penn State's defense is really good? And then also, West Virginia having some breakdowns in the secondary. Is that because, Penn State's got some really talented receivers, really was impressed by Lambert Smith. And like I said earlier, Drew Aller, I thought really did some great things. Sometimes West Virginia would bring pressure. They would even have a free man, but he would avoid that free man and get out on the perimeter and really extend the play, keep his eyes downfield, and would make some things happen when he extended the play. And so I thought that was really impressive. And at that point, it's kind of freelance, scramble drill. So can't be too mad, at the West Virginia secondary, though, if they break down at that point, if they have the initial coverage. But I don't know. I definitely thought it was a mixed bag from the secondary early on. I just wish that play, Aubrey Burks, man, a millisecond, either second or later, and he's at least batting that ball down. I mean, he's diving, and it went directly through his hands on that first Penn State touchdown. So that one was tough to swallow, but you hope you bounce back. And then West Virginia did tied the game, and from then on, I thought Penn State kind of controlled things, to be honest with you, even though West Virginia stayed within striking distance thanks to the two missed field goals there by Penn State. So I don't know, man. I mean, West Virginia was overmatched overall, I think. WVU 26, appreciate you hopping on and chiming in. He says they need to fire Brown now. Yeah, I mean, snap judgment, I think, there after one game, but certainly his seat's not any cooler after this contest. I definitely don't disagree with you there. I'm not going to say, fire him after one game. Obviously, I want to see what they do against Duquesne, and of course, more was so what they do against Pitt. I think we know they're going to win against Duquesne, or should anyway, knock on wood, I guess. But I'm waiting to see what they do against Pitt. I think that's going to be a big telltale of, Neil Brown's future, is what happens in that game. Because, albeit the result being what it was at the end, Penn State covering the spread, something, I didn't think we'd see and almost didn't see. Penn State punching one in there at the end. I think they might have got a little mad about West Virginia's ring around the rosy 2-point conversion, because they're at the end going for that 4th and 2 in the red zone, and then going for the touchdown there with 6 seconds left. Bad beat there if you had a bet on the spread there in West Virginia's favor, I guess. But nonetheless, I digress on that. I think that, one game's a little bit too early to say fire him, but there were certainly some questionable things in this game. And it's the things that we were needing to see improvement on. A lot of penalties that hurt us, a couple big runs I can think of off the top of my head that were hurt by either holding, or I think one was an illegal motion or an illegal shift penalty, illegal formation, something like that. Remember which one it was off the top of my head, but those really hurt us. And so I think that those questionable decisions are definitely something you can place on Neil Brown. And the thing that really stood out to me the most, and probably one of the most negative things that I have to say about this game, was that play call, 4th and 2, and we decided to bust out a trick play with Nico, then put Nico in cold to try and run that. It just wasn't the time, and I'm not mad at them for trying the trick plays, because, in this game, you want to pull out all the stops. You want to run those trick plays. Unfortunately for us, they just didn't work. As my co-host Steven hops in here with us. Steven here, one of our co-hosts at the Country Roads webcast. Of course, you guys know from the Postgame show probably last year.
I cannot hear you, sir.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you. All right, there we are. So I got Steven popping in, and I don't know, Steven, I was just kind of running down overall thoughts, I guess, really. And at this point, I was kind of getting into what stood out to me negatively about the game, because we had a comment here from WVU 26, already getting people on the fire Neil Brown train after one game. So I just, and what I kind of said in response was, I'm not disagreeing with him necessarily, because I don't think Neil Brown's seat's necessarily any cooler after this game, just because of the way that it ended up final score wise. And you saw some mistakes that, you've continued to see with penalties that hurt us. That's been something that's hurt us in the past, and some questionable play calls. I know people are going to talk about that and play in the secondary, but, overall, what are your thoughts in regards to, Neil Brown and this team that we saw out there in the season opener? I guess what's on the forefront of your mind right now?
As far as Neil Brown, I guess I'll start with that one. As far as Neil Brown goes, I don't know if I can really give you a proper assessment after one game, and with playing such elite level competition, and as mad as I am right now, Penn State on both sides of the football is elite level competition this year. They're going to be a very good football team.
Very good.
So we were all right in that sense, in that we were going to be tested very well, very early. But like you said, there's a lot of things that I seen from West Virginia's side of the ball, or side of things, that I did not like. Going into this game, I think that a lot of us knew that we really didn't have a chance to win the game. I mean, just truthfully speaking, you go into not only a raucous environment up in Happy Valley, but you add to that the most populated game that West Virginia football or any athletic event in WVU history has ever been, in 110,000 people. that's going to be rough anyway. And then you add to that, like I said, as good of a football team as they are, that's a hard thing to overcome. But with that being said, you have to be able to the secondary was not just bad. That was flat out awful.
And I don't know if it's specifically on the players. I mean, because I'm looking at it like, why are we 10 yards off the receiver on 3rd and 5? I mean, I don't, it's just stuff like that. I don't know if it's the scheme or more so than the players or what. But, I was
Well,
talking, I think that you look at 2020, they had the number 1 pass defense in the nation. And since that year, the secondary's been suspect. And, the thing that they've missed since that year is Jamal Adai. I think since they've lost Jamal Adai, I don't think the secondary's really been the same. And I'm not saying that to knock on Shadon Brown. I'm not saying that to knock on Jordan Leslie. I'm just saying what I've seen the past couple years. And then this first game of this season, the secondary has not been up to par.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct in that facet. It is definitely a schematic problem that I believe that we have. I don't think it's a talent problem or a skill set problem. Because if that were the case, when we go man, you would see complete, blown coverage then too. We go man, you don't see those problems. It's anytime that we went zone, they recognized it and they, and got it to the open guy. But Aubrey Burks gave up a play. As much as I heard about Beanie Bishop, Beanie didn't do. I'm not gonna.
He should have had 2 interceptions. He had 2 good plays that he should have had picks on, but he did have some other plays that weren't so good.
And especially early on, and I think I talked to you about it before the game. I think I said, if we can get a couple early turnovers, which that's asking a lot.
And that first Penn State touchdown, man, it was this close to being a pick or at least batted down. Aubrey Burks. I mean, it went through his hands.
Yeah, and like Aubrey Burks, he's a guy we've mentioned a lot on this show. I know you've been a big fan of him. I know we talked about him a bunch last year. He's got to show up, man. He's got to show up. He's a vet on this team, and he's got to be a leader, and he cannot give up assignments like that, like he did a few times tonight. I know the magnified one is the one in the first half, but there was a few times where everybody in our secondary gave up plays and made me look like a complete fool from our, preview show on this Penn State game when I said that it was going to be a complete flop on our defense this year. But
I thought so too. But and I think I don't know if their strategy was we're going to stop the run and we're going to make Drew Aller beat us and we're just going to sit back in coverage. But he showed that he could definitely do that. And if that was their strategy, I would hope that by halftime they would have decided to go away from that. But it seemed like they didn't. And I'm not going to lie, Drew Aller really impressed me. He was one of the players I was most impressed with. I mean, he almost Pat Mahomes-esque at times out there with some of the things he was doing.
A lot more mobile than I gave him credit for going into the game. I thought, we knew about his arm. We've seen that a few times in what limited role that he did play last year. But he's a little bit more mobile than I gave him credit for, to be honest.
I agree. I think so too. Jackson Johnson says, "What's up, WVU Nation?" What's up, Jackson? Appreciate you tuning in, hopping in. Everyone else that's live, appreciate y'all being here as well. Be sure drop your thoughts on the game down in the chat. We'd love to talk with you guys about it. I know everyone else has a lot of thoughts. We've got a lot running through our heads. We're going to try and get through all of ours and get to all of your alls as well. Liquid Code says, "Sup guys? Do I need to take some time and relax and not think too much about this game yet? Initial feelings are not too hot." See, that's where I'm at with it, is because I have some things are positive. The offensive line looks really good, run blocking.
Yeah.
Pass blocking, I don't know, because Penn State's pass rush is so good. And that's what I go to with my takeaways from this is how much of it is the things that looked bad because Penn State's just so good, and how much of it is areas where we're still struggling. I'm not sure yet.
I think offensively, I think it's a little bit of the first part that you said. I think that, especially later in the game, you've seen a lot of Devin Carter, and I truly believe that Preston Fox had a really good chance to catch that deep ball.
Yeah, it was there.
Hand on that. He should have caught that ball.
That was one of Green's better throws.
Yeah, it was. But then that's the thing that I was going to mention too and touch on was, if Garrett Green can calm down back there and become more of a throwing style quarterback instead of just a run it up the middle whenever you panic type of quarterback, which is what he's been good at in the past. But as I've said several times, as high as I am up on Garrett Green and how he runs our offense, I have said it multiple times. It's different whenever you have a chance to game plan against a guy like that. So I think that, for one, he was a little bit rattled early on, but once he can get settled down
Yeah.
and start making a little bit more accurate throws, we'll see a little better product out of our passing game. But on the defensive side, I think those blown coverages, I don't think that was just totally due to how good Penn State was. I think we were really just that bad on defense.
Yeah, I know. I'm worried about it. That's what we're going to have to remain to be seen right there, is what's happening in the secondary, because Penn State was a team that we thought would rely on the run heavily, and Drew Aller threw for over 300 yards. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about that one yet. That's definitely one where still a question mark to me for sure.
Yeah.
Voice of college football, the great Mark Rogers himself. Appreciate you, Mark, as always. As says, WVU competed well into the fourth. Thought it was closer than the final score indicated before it slipped away. They were playing probably one of the best teams in the country. Yeah, that's what I keep trying to tell myself with this. And that's what I was looking at, going through the game about, second, third quarter, when it was still, 14-7 or and West Virginia was hanging there. I was like, well, I don't think we're necessarily playing bad, even though I felt like, Penn State was still in control of the game. That's what I'm like. We're not really playing bad. This Penn State team's just, really good. I think this Penn State team has a great chance to win the Big Ten. I think that Drew Aller's the best quarterback I've seen them have in quite some time. Personally, I think that it adds another element for them to go with the great running backs they already have. And I think that defense, man, they got some corners that can lock down. Great play at the back end safeties as well. But that pass rush really just gets you. If you don't get, good yards on first and second down, because there were times I thought West Virginia was doing good. We'd get, 5-6 yards on first down. But then if you don't get, at least a couple on second down, if you get stuffed for, no gain or a loss, and you're stuck in 3rd and 5 or more against that Penn State defense, it's tough. You're in trouble. I don't know what our third down conversions ended up being. I think it was like 2 of 10 last time I seen it, and that's problematic. But credit to Penn State's defense for that, I think.
Yeah, and one thing I really want to touch on, it's kind of off topic, but not really. It kind of just led into what I was going to say. Is at first I really liked the aggressiveness from Neil Brown to go on it so many times on 4th down, but at this point, I've got to say he goes for it on 4th down way too much.
When it was 21-7, we needed the points there. I think you go 21-10, and I understand going for it, because it's like we talked about even in our preview podcast, that it's a game where you're outmatched a little bit. You're going to have to pull out all the stops, and I think that in essence he was trying to do that. That's why he went for a lot of 4th downs. That's why he pulled out the trick plays, and unfortunately, just none of that went our way. And even a couple of the 4th downs, they were there. I think of the one that really stands out to me was the Traylon Ray slant pass Garrett Green threw behind him a little bit. And if he hits Traylon Ray on that, it's not only a 1st down, but Traylon Ray was breaking that for a big one, I believe.
We can make excuses, but I will say that one, I got to go back and watch it. But in real time, Traylon Ray needs to make that catch. And here's as much as I've heard that name this offseason, to never have worn a West Virginia uniform before, he's got to make that play. He was wide open right there, man. Even if the ball's a little bit behind him, you know what I mean? I was kind of upset about that. And at that point, I was sitting there saying, again, what can you believe anything that Neil Brown says? Because that's all he's talked about this offseason is Traylon Ray.
Coming out of this, the one concern that I definitely have, defensively, it's what we talked about there, secondary. Offensively, it's definitely the passing game. The verdict's still out on that for me. Both with who we've got catching the passes, who we're playing out there, I guess I should say, anyways. Because I don't. Did Rodney Gallagher play on offense? I don't think I saw Rodney Gallagher. I didn't see Jaheim White. But, and it's not a knock on Preston Fox or, anyone that did see the field. I thought Devin Carter looked good at times. I thought Cole Taylor looked good at times. But I think we just need to see better consistency out of Garrett Green. And I don't know if, like you said, it was maybe nerves early on that, he missed some throws that he should have hit. But it's like he'll throw some really good passes, and then he'll throw one, have a guy wide open, and it's either really high or it's behind him. So I think if he can get more consistent, then Garrett Green's going to be okay because he did some great things with his legs, but
Oh yeah.
passing wise, Devin Carter I thought stood out. I think he ended up with around 90 receiving yards or so. Some good things from Cole Taylor. But what do you think about the passing game? Because to me that's something that I'm still worried about coming out of this game.
I'm a lot like you. I'm not too confident in it just yet. I've seen some things late, but I'm afraid that was a little bit of a skewed view of that because you've seen Penn State's defense starting to slack off just a tad. But if we can get the ball to Devin Carter a little bit more, I mean I told my papa whenever I was watching the game with him and my cousin earlier that I think that his body, his frame reminds me of somewhat of Wes Lyons whenever he was here. He's got a really tall body, really beefy, not too lanky, but can still move. You know what I mean? He's got great hands.
Right.
And if we could have gotten him incorporated into the offense a little bit more, a little bit early, I think we have a little bit better shot. But I'm a big Preston Fox fan. I love the guy just as much as every other West Virginia fan. We got to go to our playmakers though, man. Like we've got to hit these. Like you said, we didn't play Rodney Gallagher a single snap tonight. When you probably should have played him and get him at least used to the environment, play him somewhat.
Yeah, because to me, and it's not even. I think that Cortez Braham has good potential. I think Preston Fox, all those guys. But it's like some of the plays we're running, right? Like we're running a jet sweep or we're running screen pass. To me, we ran a jet sweep to Cortez Braham, who I think is a good receiver, but to me, he's not somebody I would hand off a jet sweep to. I mean, I got Jaheim White on the roster. I've got Rodney Gallagher, other guys that I think are better suited for that play. And then a lot of the screens as well. Devin Carter, like you talk about, big bodied receiver, possession, can make plays downfield, tough catches. Not necessarily a guy that I would throw a ton of screens to, maybe every now and then, but I felt like we were targeting him a ton on screens too. And I don't know, some of the play calling to me was, one of the more suspect things as well. What did you think about the play calling? Because, we got to talk about it. Neil Brown taking it back over. We've had issues with it in the past. I thought, with a running quarterback, we would see some different things, and we certainly did. I really liked a lot of the wrinkles that we saw. We saw some triple option stuff, the ring around the rosy 2-point, conversion Chiefs play. We saw some fun things, some different things.
Oh, yeah.
But there were also some times where it was very questionable. Early that first drive, we get that 3rd and 3. Penn State's coming directly at CJ. We hand it right to him. That gets blown up. And, of course, I talked about, I think just as you were coming on, to me, the most atrocious play call of this game and maybe of the Neil Brown era. It's up there for me, was that 4th and 2. We finally bring in Nico Cold to run a crazy trick play.
That
terrible. But overall, play calling, pluses, minuses. What did you think?
Yeah, that was actually going to be the play that I referenced whenever talking about this was, the play they brought Nico in and then you swing Garrett out to the side and then you're supposed to who knows what's coming? Everybody in the daggone stadium and everybody that's watching the game on TV. Penn State's too good of a defense to run that type of play on 4th down, no less.
At that time, it was just terrible. And we had talked about, like in the preview show, doing something like that, like get both those guys on the field, do something cool. But I was thinking early in the game, first, second down in the first quarter, not 4th and 2 when you're down. I think we were still down 7 at that point or 14. Yeah. I mean, it was still striking distance.
But. Well, with that being said, though, the other play that you mentioned, the Kansas City play. Probably one of the most exciting 2-point conversions you'll ever see, and probably one of the most. That's probably one of the most excited I've been watching a play like that since we've had explosiveness and during the Dana Holgorsen era. But early on, I liked a lot of the way that we were running the offense. The route trees that I was seeing was a lot different than what we ran last year, which I thought was a positive. But it just I really want to hold my tongue on this one because I don't really want to judge it yet. But I mean, my heart and my gut are telling me that it's not going to work. It's not going to work, man. If we go 6-6 this year, and we've got to deal with that a whole nother year before we can afford a buyout, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough.
Well,
I'll say that.
I agree with you, and because if today what we saw tonight was, with some different wrinkles, it was still that, slow pace, Neil Brown, boring style, right? But I'm wondering, is that just because that was the game plan for against Penn State? They wanted to possess the ball as long as possible, and maybe
Run the
maybe
clock.
throughout the season, we'll see them open up more with more tempo, do some even more innovative things that they didn't break out in this game. So that's what I'm maybe I'm just trying to be glass half full kind of guy, be a little optimistic, but that's what I'm hoping anyways, was that it was just more game plan design, that the offense was kind of the way that it was, because I did see some, like you said, different things, interesting things in there that we hadn't seen in the past. So I don't know. I'm like, that's still verdict still out on that one for me too, I guess.
I would want to, I'd be more apt to believe that that were the case if it was a more offensive renowned team. But Penn State, they're not that they're not good on offense. They're obviously pretty good on offense. But they're more of a defensive team. So going into this game, I thought, if West Virginia can, do what they're going to, if they can attack this defense pretty well, they have a pretty good shot. But it just didn't seem like they were very aggressive and trying to attack. I mean, or it didn't look like that they
Yeah.
were.
I felt that way as well. Like I thought that they were conservative until they got behind, and then they started doing some aggressive things. Like we didn't break out the trick plays until we were down 14, at least. And so I don't know. I wanted to see that aggression, from the beginning. So I'm with you. I wanted to see more of that, and hopefully, what the old saying goes, you improve your most from game one to game two. So hopefully we'll come out, lay a smackdown on Duquesne, and then get ready for the big one.
Yep.
That one that everybody's looking forward to. And but let's catch up on some comments here. Greg Adams says, "Don't get me started." Oh, come on, Greg,
Come
get
on,
started,
man.
Greg. We want to hear about it, man. We want to hear your thoughts.
We
I'm
got
sure
it, man.
there's a lot to say about this game, indeed. Joshua Leggett says, "I don't know. I thought West Virginia did pretty good against the number 7 team in the country. Let's not be too negative about our team." Exactly. I'm trying not to be, because I did
Yeah,
think
same.
they stuck with them, in that first half, and I think that a lot of people that voted in the media poll that picked West Virginia last, all this negativity that's been put out about West Virginia heading into this season, I think a lot of those people were probably pleasantly surprised and impressed by, what West Virginia put on the field tonight overall. I know we're closer to it, so we're disappointed because we wanted to see, West Virginia keep it even closer than what they did. But I think, outside people are probably, saying this looks like a really improved West Virginia team. So,
Which is pretty wild to think about with the final score looking the way that it did. But I think that Mark Rogers had a good point. I think the game was a lot closer than the score indicates, and
yeah.
I think you had a good point. James Franklin probably took it personally on that 2-point conversion and ran the score up there at the end. But
Yeah, because there was no way, man. Because they had 4th and 2, went for it, and then it was 6 seconds. They could have just needed. Yeah,
no, yeah, absolutely, yeah. There's no reason to score that touchdown, but it is what it is. And I think my papa made a great point. The last 2 times we faced them before this, West Virginia beat the shit out of them. So
No, that's true. That's true. It was like what, 40-6 at halftime or something in '88, I think.
Yeah. What a
Yeah,
time to be alive, right?
right.
So I was telling
Maybe
them, I wish,
maybe one day.
there's Google Earth, but I wish that there was a Google Earth that you could go back in time and kind of look and see what things look like back in time, because I would definitely go back to '88 and see what it looked like during those times and
Absolutely.
see what the city of Morgantown was going like after that game.
Absolutely. Too bad we couldn't have played them in like '07 or something.
You know what, man? That would have. Yeah, let's not talk about that yet.
Fingers crossed though that we keep improving this year, and then next year when they come to Morgantown, it's a little bit more of even matchup. We'll see how we
Yeah.
build from here. But Joshua Leggett also says toughest game on all year on our schedule. Let's go Mountaineers. Let's go Mountaineers always, Joshua. Appreciate you. But I do agree on that point. Definitely, I think that we just played the best team we'll play all year, and certainly the best defense we'll face all year.
Absolutely. And if they do end up being, what we believe that they will be in the Big Ten, they have a good shot at being a playoff contender this year. So,
Yeah, definitely think so too. I was going to ask you about something and it slipped my mind. It'll come back in a minute. Snow Lord 1999. How long does Neil Brown last? I think he makes it through the season. Personally, I don't think they're going to fire him.
I do. I mean, unless something absolutely astronomically crazy happens.
Yeah.
he's keeping his job through the rest of this year. I think a large part of that is due because not only did he luck out a few years ago and get that contract signed way early in his tenure, that really boded well in Neil Brown's favor and not really in West Virginia's without seeing what he could do yet. So Ren Baker coming in, Ren Baker already has enough on his plate. He's not going to add to that, putting
Right.
our school and our athletic department that much more in debt by going into a buyout when you can wait one more year, get the buyout, and keep or not have to go through a buyout and then possibly get somebody better in the coach carousel. But there's a lot of factors that go into it, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
This
really
this
want to love the guy, man, so bad. But
I do too, man.
golly.
I do. And there were times in this game I was like, okay, because there are aspects I'm like, we look improved. As bad as the secondary was, I thought our run defense wasn't bad. We did some good things with run defense because those are good backs. They broke some chunk runs, but they're going to those good backs they have that are
Oh yeah.
good at breaking tackles. I certainly thought our tackling was improved from last season. I liked what I saw from Anthony Wilson. I liked what I saw from Lee Koba, some of the D line. I think we're good D
Oh,
line and
Lee.
linebackers. It's just that secondary.
I tell you what, man, I'm glad you keep touching on a couple points that I was forgetting to talk about. Lee Koba has transformed from a man to the man.
Right.
That
Looks
man
like it
is.
out there on the field.
Yes, he does. This version of Lee Koba is what I expected to see last year, but a year removed, I'll take it. I just wish he had a little help behind him.
And for all the questions about the will linebacker spot, Trey Lathan, I thought really had some bright spots.
Yeah, he did. He did. You're not wrong about that either. But like I said, I wish that West Virginia's run defense traditionally has been pretty good the last few years. It's that secondary that just cannot match up well with them. It's ever since Tyke Smith left that we just cannot get it going.
I know, and tonight it looked like they were throwing plenty of different bodies out there too. I mean, I saw them cycle through 3-4 different guys at corner and stuff, but it just, I don't know, man. I don't know. Something's got to give there, and I think if you keep going the way you're going and the secondary doesn't improve, like I said, small sample size, it's one game. See what they do against Duquesne and what they do in that final non-conference game against the team from up north. That you know what they do. But
I will say that if we lose that game right there that you just mentioned, because I watched them play today against Wofford, I'm gonna make my prediction right now. West Virginia's beating that team, and if we don't beat that team, then I will be on that fire Neil Brown this year train.
Well, because what I'm thinking is we're talking about firing Neil Brown, but if something happens and say they do lose that game, or even if they end up winning that game, but the secondary looks awful, the spit quarterback goes for 300 plus again, then you're talking about maybe somebody on the defensive staff being a scapegoat. We think Neil Brown will survive this season and, see what happens in the off season. But I think if the defensive secondary doesn't improve, this season, because last season was bad and all we were talking about was, well, they can't be any worse. They're going to at least be the same or better. They looked very similar in a lot of areas. So, I mean, if there's no improvement whatsoever, something's going to have to give there for sure, I think.
Absolutely. But I mean, I'm just so tired of being in the position, well, if this doesn't work, then we've got to go to this guy. And then, Neil Brown has had ample amount of time to get his coaches in place. You know what I mean? I know that, he's got personal relationships with some of these guys, but you got to be able to cut ties, man. Like, and him and Jordan Leslie, I don't want to be too harsh on because he started off on a good foot, but I think you were right. I think a lot of that was due to what Jamal Adai was doing. I hate to say that because we've been so hard on him and he stole our players, but was there a good reason from Jamal Adai's part?
That's what I'm saying. And, just looking at it from the outside looking in, Neil Brown knew Jordan Leslie. He didn't really know Jamal Adai before he hired him here at West Virginia. Him and Jordan Leslie have a history, so he went with his guy. And, I think that may come back to bite him. I don't know. We'll see.
I got a question for you. How many of Neil Brown's guys has panned out in a positive manner for West Virginia in the past 5 years? Go. Not one.
I mean,
Not
offensive
one.
line, Matt Moore, Chad Scott. I mean,
Okay. I'll give that to you.
those
I'll give that to
two.
you.
That's probably the two. But I mean,
Okay.
other than
I'm
that,
thinking
yeah.
I'm thinking more of Jordan Leslie, Jared Deggy.
Well, yeah. Okay, yeah. I see what you mean there. Yeah,
Like
I
these
get it.
guys that he's so like, these are my guys, and I stood by them for a reason.
Right.
Reese Smith. Reese. I'm sorry, buddy. I really loved you. I'm sorry, but come on, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's just a talent level that we haven't seen at West Virginia in the past half decade that I think has been a noticeable difference. And from the amount of talent that we're like, okay, well, West Virginia's got more 4 and 5 star guys on campus. Now, I remember we talked about that a few years ago. We got more 4 and 5 star guys on campus right now than West Virginia's ever had before.
Right.
Okay, well, they don't look like that to me. And now it's either a development issue, which I believe it is, or it's a recruiting issue. And right now I'm leaning towards the development issue because a lot of these guys that you see that we get recruited and highly touted, they don't play well at West Virginia. They go to the next school and then they're an all-star.
Yeah.
Ali Jennings,
I think it's a mixture of development, and I'm starting to really question just in-game coaching. I think that planning wise, building the program, recruiting, all aspects outside of game day, within those 60 minutes that you play, I think that this Neil Brown and most of the staff is great at all that. But it's like in-game coaching, it's just questionable at this point. We talked about it the years prior to this, and then in this game, you just see some more of those things. Those mental mistakes that have really cost us in the past. Whether it be having to call timeouts, whether it be costly penalties, and then the play calls that just don't make any sense. We've already talked, about the trick play with bringing in Nico when Nico hadn't hardly even, hadn't touched the field yet in that game. And I don't know if that's just because Neil promised Nico we'd get him on the field or whatever, but it was just terrible timing. And so there's just things to me that when there's like in the game, I don't know if they're great at making adjustments. I don't know what it is, but it seems like every time we have a good first half against the team, especially if it's a team that's supposed to beat us and we're sticking with them, go to the locker room, they come out in the second half, they've got some great adjustments to whatever we were doing, and then we just get boat raced.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I absolutely agree with you. I think that, and it's kind of a conundrum to me that, we hired Neil Brown not solely based on the premise of it, but pretty much of him going into these at a place like Troy, he can go into LSU and get a big time victory, and some of these places. How can he have the talent level to do so at a school like that? And you've had how many years now? You haven't had a single top 10, top 20 top 25 road victory.
We haven't even won 3 games in a row.
Right.
Not once.
How many times has West Virginia started 1-0 under Neil Brown?
What's like the first year? I mean, I know we're 0-1 the past 3, so
the very first year, and we won a bowl game. So that brings to my next point. As hard as we are on the guy, that was with Dana's recruits. And then the next year after that, where did all those go? Down to Houston. So, and you still seen it all the way up till last year. Mike O'Loughlin was still at West Virginia, and he finally decides, like, look, it's not working out. I'm going to go to the original coach that I played for. And I know that I've been so hard on him, but, it reaches a point. We were hard on Dana because we were a top 20 program every year. We were sticking around the 20s, right? We could not pass that 8-win season mark. Couldn't get there. We traded that in because we were so harsh on that guy because we couldn't pass that hump for 5 and 6 win seasons every year.
And right now, you're right. I mean, you're right. Yeah.
I just don't see.
That's how it's been. Yeah.
I get it if you're going to go through a 1, 2, 3 year max slump like that. But, and in a position of college football the way that it is right now, and you got teams that are being left by the wayside if you can't compete. In some cases with this conference realignment, although I think West Virginia's in a pretty good spot. But, you just never know what's going to happen. And then, you go a decade, God forbid 2 decades without being able to compete on the gridiron, and then it remains to be seen what happens on the court. But I don't know. I do think that I get too harsh on them in terms of things like this because I talk about this stuff a bunch, but I just think the West Virginia needs to show that they are still going to be able to compete in the conference like the Big 12, especially with adding all these teams that they've been adding, because competition's not getting any easier.
Yeah, it's going to continue to be hard, especially basketball. It's going to be ridiculous. But here in football, we've got to, I think we need to show it this year. Of course, we know this is a big year for Neil Brown, but just in general for West Virginia, I think to show, that they're going to be able to compete in the new Big 12. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, this is just tough to take a lot out of this game because Penn State is such a good team. We'll see how improved West Virginia is. I think that remains to be seen, defensively, offensively, all areas really. But, while we're talking about coaching decisions, there is something that I thought personally I was kind of questioning a little bit, and that is the usage of C.J. Donaldson. I think he ended up with 18 carries, if I'm not mistaken. But, I think it was the first drive or two. He had, 4 or 5, somewhere between probably 4 and 8 carries. And then it was almost like I didn't even see C.J. Donaldson in for the next, felt like 2 to 3 series,
Mm-hmm.
And if he did come in, he came in like once on the third down play, and it would be a pass, and we wouldn't complete it, and then when we would punt. So, I thought in the first half we could have used a little bit more CJ, and I know we got to try and manage him. We don't want him to get hurt again, so I understand that they're probably trying to limit his workload. But in your opinion, did we see enough CJ tonight? I think 18 carries is what it ended up off the top of my head. I could be wrong there, but I think it was 18. But just not even carry wise, but from the naked eye, what did you think about his usage and kind of their way that they were rotating those running backs in general? I guess.
I think that there was a lot of inconsistency in it. I think that once they decided to feed CJ, CJ did what CJ does, and he can get. What I like about him is the initial contact is most of the time not going to be whenever he's brought down. It's going to be whenever that third and fourth guy gets to him, and he's that's going to bring him down. And you'd get a couple first downs, and then they'd stop feeding him. And then, like you said, there was I think there was one specific they had a pretty long drive before they had to punt the ball, and then you didn't see CJ for like 3 or 4 series after that. And I think Jalen Anderson did well, but as good as CJ is, I think 18 carries isn't bad, but you got to have especially against a defense like this, you got to feed him all night. You got to feed him and feed him. But one thing that I really will say, that I noticed for CJ to be a tight end originally, that would leave me to assume that the guy has pretty good hands as a receiver, right? Why are we not running this man out of the backfield and getting him some plays out in the open field, like on some halfback screens? We love the wide receiver screens enough. Well, when you got playmakers.
The only time, I saw him split him out a couple of times and threw a screen to him once, but, not really anything route-wise to him hardly,
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I agree that they should do it more, and I don't know if it's because they didn't trust that their passing protection could hold up against Penn State's pass rush, but really, we just didn't try a lot of passes downfield until, the game was well in hand there in the fourth. Then we started throwing downfield a little bit, and it looked good on that final, drive or two. But I was questioning that as well early on. I know we want to establish the run, and I know we want to run the football, but, the first 2-3 drives, it felt like it was either a handoff or a screen. Nothing thrown, more than 5 yards downfield for a while. And
yeah,
as much as I love us leaning on the run and want to see us do that, I don't, we're not going to win a lot of games if we're not able to throw down the field at all. So that's, that goes back to what we were saying earlier about the passing offense. But as far as CJ is concerned, I'd like to see him get a little bit more touches, but I'm hoping to see, Jaheim White. I was a little bit disappointed we didn't see any Jaheim White or Rodney Gallagher personally.
Yeah, main one was Rodney Gallagher. I really wanted to see a lot of him, and I get that you don't really want to throw him in there if he's not ready, but when was the last time you seen a freshman highly touted like that didn't come in and play immediately? I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta get the guy on the field, man, and especially in these types of environments. Whenever we're down 2 touchdowns, is whenever these guys will start to touch the field for me, especially when it's starting to touch the fourth quarter. And so, very disappointed about that.
I don't know, man. I just don't, with the receivers. And like I said, this isn't to knock the starters that ran out there. Cortez Braham, Devin Carter, Preston Fox. I think they do good things. But how much did we hear about Noah Massey and him being a 6'5" slot receiver? How much did we hear about EJ Horton and how fast this guy was burning everybody? And, like we already said Gallagher, Jashawn Polk. Where were they? Where were they?
My best advice to you, Cruz, old buddy.
Jeremiah Aaron, I saw once. I mean, where were they?
Stop listening to Neil Brown in the offseason. Because basically anything that you hear the man say, we're going to see the opposite. I mean, it is.
Yeah, that's just something that I was kind of baffled by. They were talking, all these 8-9 receivers, and I saw 3-4 guys. So I don't know. 5 if you count Traylon Ray getting in there the occasional times that he did. But
Preston Fox, I would say, was on the field about 95% of the game tonight.
Yeah, Preston Fox. I said it was Preston Fox, Devin Carter, Cortez Braham.
Yep.
One of those, any 2 of those 3 on the field, at any given time, and then sprinkle in, Traylon Ray handful of snaps, Jeremiah Aaron handful of snaps, and then I don't know if we even saw any of the other guys. I don't recall seeing any of them, so I don't know what's up with that. But
I don't know, buddy. It is.
I don't know. I'm feeling like I'm siding with Nick here. His daily weekend dose of fall depression has returned. Good to see you guys again. Good to see you again, Nick. Appreciate you. Glad to be back here.
Good to be back.
Hey, the good thing about it, Nick, is we can guarantee after every one of these games, hopefully we'll have some more positive results. But either way, we'll be here to talk about it with you, whether we're celebrating or whether it's more therapeutic like this one has kind of been. I know we've kind of been all over the place, but I know we've had a ton of thoughts. I'm sure you guys have a ton of thoughts. So I don't know.
Yeah.
No more. Why don't we run 2 more 2-back sets? Great question. We got great running backs instead of giving CJ a series and then giving Jalen Anderson a series and then giving Justin Johnson a series. Play them, together.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I only saw it a couple times.
I don't think intelligence is Neil Brown's strong suit when it comes to the personnel that he puts out there on these sets.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know. I feel like we've been negative here for a little bit too long. So let's, as we get closer to wrapping this thing up, I want to say appreciate everyone that tuned in here live. If you're watching this on a playback, didn't get a chance to watch it live, be sure catch the next one after the Duquesne game. We'll be back here again. Post-game shows immediately following every West Virginia football game this season here on the West Virginia channel at the Voice of College Football and on the new Big 12 channel, which we'd love for you to subscribe to if you're a Mountaineer fan or a fan of Big 12 football or college football in general. Be sure to subscribe there as well. Like this video if you haven't already. That helps whether you're watching live or on a playback. And if you are in here live, drop your thoughts in here. Try and catch up on some of your all's comments. But before we get out of here, I don't want to be too negative. Some positives, Stephen. What are some positive things that you thought you saw in this game that you're kind of taking away? Like, okay, we look better in that area, we look improved in this area, or something that really stood out to you, whether it be a player or anything really. Let's just try and bring it home with some more optimism here at the end, I guess, because it wasn't all bad.
It wasn't all bad. I did see some things that I think that we got some building blocks that we can use to go into next week and especially the week after. One thing I mentioned him earlier, but Lee Koba made vast improvements from last season from what I saw tonight. He was in there virtually every single time it looked like, we were making a tackle. He and Sean Martin, I want to give props to, so they were both very good. Our run defense, I think, will be very good this year, as bad as our pass defense is. So if you're a team going to play us, just pass it every play. But with that said, I do think that once we settle in, our running game is going to be fairly decent this year in the Big 12. And I think that, if we can just get some chemistry between ourselves, our offensive line, obviously very, very good. CJ, obviously very, very good. I just think that, like we've mentioned, we just need to spread it out a little bit more between him and the other guys because I, I don't want to say this to jinx the guy, but I think Garrett Green has a strong chance of getting hurt if he got beat up as well as he did tonight.
He can't take as many hits as he did tonight.
Exactly. He just can't. And if he's not going to be allowed to slide and get his head taken off, and they're not going to throw a flag, it's only going to be a matter of time. Twice. That's exactly. That was. I won't even get into that right now, but there are positives to be gained from this game. I know that the score makes it look super bad, but I don't know. I think that if you play this game in Morgantown, I think it's probably a one-score affair, just to be truthfully honest, because I think the crowd helped them, especially later in the game. Being so into it, West Virginia just could not get anything going, any kind of momentum. They just could never take the crowd out of the game.
I know. I'm right there with you. But, I think that for me, number one was, despite some questionable play call on and some penalties that hurt us, we didn't turn the ball over. That's big. And I thought that I really liked the resiliency, the fight of the team. When we got down 7-0, fought back, tied it up. When we were down, 21-7, kept fighting. Even there at the end, getting that last touchdown, that drive that we did, and the 2-point conversion. Still love the fight of the team. Still love the passion CJ was showing. Garrett Green, if there's one thing you can say about him, he's got that dog in him. He's going to keep fighting, and
it does.
I like the attitude of this team. I think that this team does, carry the chip on their shoulder a little bit. I think they went out to show that in this game, but they were just honestly overmatched. This Penn State team was really good, so I think that I did see some things that they can build upon. They can certainly build upon that rushing game. This offensive line looks great. The run game looks great. I think you'll see more wrinkles with that run game where you'll see more things designed for Garrett. Maybe like someone mentioned earlier, more two-back sets. I think you'll see some more of that. And, as Jason Matney puts it here as well, that's the other positive for me, is it's not a conference game. Penn State probably going to go 10-2 again this year, Jason Matney says. So we lost to a quality team. And he says, look at the Big 12 scores this week. Baylor lost to Texas State. Texas Tech's maybe going to lose to Wyoming. BYU struggling to move the ball against Sam Houston. So we could be in a much worse position. Yes, we lost this game, but we didn't lose because of a turnover. As I said, no turnovers. So I think, looking at the conference, and, it's something that we talked about in the SPR and even in this, preview episode, Stephen, the Big 12's kind of open this year. There's really, Texas is really talented. Kansas State's really talented, but West Virginia's regular season schedule, they don't have to play either of those two teams. So I think a lot of West Virginia's schedule, has a lot of winnable games on it. I think that what we saw put out there on the field offensively from West Virginia, if they can get some kinks worked out in the passing game, I think that they can score with probably anybody in this conference. Like you said, run defense looks good. We just got to see what's up with that pass defense. So there's certainly some positives, I think. Moving forward, looking ahead, got to beat Spit. That's what we talked about. But I think in the conference, West Virginia is not finishing last. That's a definite. And, they're going to compete.
Yeah, they're going to compete this year. I do think that there's going to be, that's a good thing that we don't play Kansas State or Texas this year, because those two teams are going to be, I think, the top two in our league.
Yeah.
But I disagree in terms of the talent level that we're going to be matched up here in the next few weeks. I think TCU, for anybody, I know you watched that game. For anybody that watched that game today, Colorado is obviously the truth. Deion Sanders, Travis Hunter, and all those guys are the truth. I don't know why I wanted to mention them, but I did want to mention them.
It was impressive.
That was a very impressive game today. But with that being said, I think that TCU's showing against them was also very impressive. That was it was a back and forth dogfight all game long. So I think that we're going to get a pretty good shot from them. I think UCF. I think as much as they were supposed to have fallen off after their national championship year a couple years ago, I think that they have still. That's a great quality brand of football that they're playing down there in Orlando right now.
They're the best of the newcomers for this year.
I believe so too. But I also think that BYU, I think that there's going to be a chance that a lot of these guys that we're going to play is going to be pretty good brands of football. Oklahoma, obviously, very, very good again this year
Right.
from what it looked like from the first game. So this isn't going to be the only test that West Virginia has, but I think that it's going to bode well that this is going to be the toughest test that I believe West Virginia will have all year, because I don't think you're going to see um, just an evenly matched team on both sides of the football like this team was.
Right.
Probably not for a couple of years, honestly.
Well, and if anything gives me hope for the rest of the season from this game, it's that Penn State defense, I think you could make a case it may be the best of college football. You're talking top 10, top 5 for sure, I think.
Them in Michigan, and that's what's
Right.
crazy is both of them playing the Big Ten.
And what gives me hope about that is West Virginia was able to move the ball. They didn't score a lot of points. They only ended up with 15 points. They didn't get it done once they crossed midfield, but they didn't have a ton of 3 and outs. They moved the ball well, and they ran the ball, well. They got over 100 yards. I believe it was, nearly 150 as a team, if I'm not mistaken. So those are really good signs for, moving forward when you're talking about how good this Penn State defense is. So, we harped on some things earlier, but there really were some positives for West Virginia to build on as well that has me excited for the rest of the season still yet, guys. I mean, we got 11 games to go. This one didn't go the way we wanted, but I think that this West Virginia team is still going to surprise some people.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, as much as we have our blue and gold shades on, I think that after losses like this, it's hard to remove the blackout shades, I guess, is
Right.
what I call them, because it's really hard to not view things so negatively, especially this close, after the game has ended, and we, as diehard Mountaineer fans, I think a lot of us always get wildly optimistic, especially, right up until kickoff for a new season and haven't seen what the product on the field is yet. So I think that that's part of the disappointment that we're feeling right now. But I think I'm a lot like you. I think that we have a lot of things that we will probably come back to in a few weeks and say, well, you know what, we were able to do that against Penn State. That's probably why we're able to do it, so well against these guys.
Yep, I agree.
Let's hope so anyway.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed, because I'm literally on the fence right now. Because I feel like I got a leg on each side of the fence, because I can literally look over here and I can be like, oh man, that was pass defense. It was just breakdown after breakdown again, and some of those play calls were questionable. But then I can look over here and we did run the football. CJ looked great. They stopped 2 good Penn State running backs, held them pretty good. So I really don't know what to say yet. It's really a case for me of let's just wait and see. So hopefully, next couple of weeks we're talking more positively on these post-game shows and let the chips fall where they may.
Yep, and that's it. And unless we lose next week, I don't believe that even next week that I will be able to. Oh God forbid. But even after next week, I don't know that I'll be able to sit here and give you an accurate description of what I'm feeling like of this team, because it is Duquesne. I don't think I'll be able to give that to you until after week 3. Until I can see that. So
yeah.
Tough place right now, man. Tough place.
I know it is. So unfortunately for the 2023 season, West Virginia starts 0-1, falling to Penn State 38-15 in the season opener. But we really enjoyed talking about it with you guys here in the post game. As much as we didn't enjoy watching the loss, we always do enjoy the post game shows with you guys, and looking forward to a full season of those again. Again, we're the Country Roads Webcast host. You can find us on any podcast platform you like. Just search for Country Roads Webcast. You can also find us on YouTube. And if you want to follow us on Twitter/X, it's at WVU Country Roads. We'll be here throughout the season for all of these West Virginia post-game shows. So catch us here again next Saturday for the game against Duquesne. But having said that, Stephen, I think we've pretty well dove in on this one, at least with our initial thoughts. We'll talk more about it in our next podcast episode, our Penn State review. So you guys can check that out here in the near future. But as far as talking here live in this immediate post-game reaction, Stephen, anything else you want to add or we didn't touch on here at the end before we wrap this one up?
No, I'm ready to move on to what I expect to be a much happier outcome next week. Ready to be back in Morgantown and then, seeing all the people that I enjoy seeing at the games. But I don't know. I'm just verdict's still out, like you said.
Yeah. It's mixed feeling right now, for sure. For me, I guess it would be the best way to put it, but we'll see what happens moving forward. be back here next week. In the meantime and in between time, be sure subscribe to the West Virginia channel with the Voice of College Football if you haven't already, and subscribe to the Big 12 channel, trying to continue to grow that thing. And these post-game streams will be there after every game throughout this season. And of course, on the West Virginia channel, you'll see a lot of great content throughout the weeks as well, from Joey Foster, the Wolfman Dale Wolfley doing great live streams. And of course, Ryan and Rush, they're doing awesome stuff here. Love the work the Ryan and Rush show's putting in here on the West Virginia channel. So be sure to subscribe here if you're a West Virginia fan and you haven't already. And if you're a fan of college football, Big 12 in general, be sure to subscribe to the Big 12 channel there at the Voice of College Football. Drop a like, thumbs up on this video before you head out. And if you're watching this on a playback, didn't get a chance to join us live, be sure hop in with us live next week, September 9th, following the game against Duquesne. We'll be back here again for the post-game show. Having said that, to wrap this one up, for Steven, I'm Jordan from the Country Roads webcast. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.